Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supernatural as well as the latest episode of Colony. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time of when I start talking about each of the respective shows I'm talking about. So, for example, if you want to hear what I have to say about this week's episode of Supernatural, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Colony. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Supernatural. So basically this episode dealt with essentially a spirit that was basically killing a lot of people, in particular teachers, or at least people in like a teacher authority type of manner. And it seems like this is all connected to Gavin, which I totally forgot was a thing. That's why, I think I've brought it up in other recordings, but that's always a thing about Supernatural that kind of messes with my head, because Supernatural will reference stuff from like previous, like many seasons ago, and like bring it back up in a different season. Like a great example, and using Gavin for example, Gavin was like season 9 because that was connected to Abaddon, and Abaddon was like season 9, so it's like that was like 3 seasons ago. I mean, technically 3 seasons ago. I mean, it's not like this is the only time they do it. They do it a lot throughout the series, especially as the series is going on. There's been a lot of stuff they'll reference to like 5 or 6 seasons beforehand that, like I said, I brought up before. I catch episodes here and there because it syndicates on TNT and stuff, but I have not sat down and entirely watched like the earlier seasons, like season 9 and back. I have not only seen entirely one time when they were originally airing, so. But nevertheless, it's not the point. Gavin pops up in this episode because it turns out that Gavin's connected to this ghost, because this ghost is connected to the ship that he was supposed to be on, before Abaddon ripped him out of time, but Crowley never put him back in time, because it's like, Crowley didn't want his son to die. And we end up finding out the ghost on this ship is his fiance at the time, Fiona. Because what this is all about is Fiona snuck aboard because her and Gavin were supposed to go together, but then, obviously the whole Abaddon situation pulling him out of that particular time period and now being stuck here in the present, Fiona snuck aboard by herself because she thought Gavin was going to be there, but sadly Gavin wasn't, so basically she had to stay aboard by herself, which had a huge drawback because basically once the ship's crew found out about her being up there, they did a lot of terrible things to her. And none of the other passengers did anything, lifted a finger to help her. There was even one particular teacher that was, she taught both Fiona and Gavin. She was actually like, she deserved it. So that's kind of why she went specifically after teachers in this episode. Which is like super, really sad, because she's been like, that's how she became a ghost in the first place, is because she held on to so much hate for all the people, all the bad things that happened to her. The teacher that was, that pretended to care for her in one moment and was there to tutor her and be there for her, and in that moment of need that she really needed her, even going as far as blaming her and saying like it was her own fault that it happened to her. I mean, to have all that anguish inside of you and anger, also it was directed at Gavin too, because it's like the man that she loved wasn't there to protect her like he said he was going to. And basically they're like, oh man, all we can, like, it's like, because they don't know, they're like, there's no 100% way for sure to know how we're going to get rid of Fiona. It's like her bones, obviously at the bottom of the sea, no burning that. And even when they destroy the amulet that she's connected to, who's to say that she's not connected to anything else on the ship, because just, her anger is so much that could easily be tied to anything connected to the ship. There's a lot of stuff. And it's like, which they present an option I didn't even think about. It's like, well, we can undo everything, even technically bring back the people she's killed. I'm like, how would you do that? I was like, they're like, send Gavin back, fix history. And if Gavin's there, that puts Fiona being there, and she never turns into a ghost because he was there to protect her, to stop that stuff from happening. And at the very least, when they die, at least they have each other and she won't be by herself, dealing with all that pain and anguish. At least, and Gavin even looked at it the same way of being like, hey, at the very least, we have all this, we can spend the rest of eternity together. I mean, obviously, another piece of this episode kind of bringing up, because I'm just kind of all over the place with that, so I apologize, is the whole Rowena situation, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, oh, this is her first time finding out about having a grandson, isn't it? Which I can understand why Crowley would not let his mom know. It's like, oh, you actually have a grandchild. Because it's like, oh, you screwed up with me, you abandoned me, there's no way I'm going to let you near my child. You're not even worth knowing the information that you have a grandchild out there. Because all it does is going to serve, all it's going to serve is for you, because the point I'm trying to make is, like, Crowley is like, no, like, even though he's not there for his son, I guess he checks in every once in a while, I assume. Maybe he keeps his distance because it's like, if people found out too much about the whole Gavin situation, that it kind of, would affect him as, king of hell and everything. But for Rowena, I also looked at it as like a second chance for her, because it's like, oh, she wasn't there for Crowley, and now she can use this as an opportunity to kind of get to know her grandson and be there for him, kind of make up for the relationship that she never had with Crowley. I mean, that's what I assume. I mean, it turns out that Rowena had a darker reason for it. Obviously, the first reason is like, oh, obviously, because she brings up something interesting. It's like, Gavin, he's a better person than you and me. He actually believes in something. He actually cares about something. Like, he's trying to do the right thing. He's like, neither one of us ever does the right thing out of the goodness of our own heart or doing it for the sake of other people. It's like, we always do good things because we get something out of it. Even the whole Rowena, like, helping them in this situation, they're like, yeah, we'll give you something really good. And she's like, oh, because she thinks she's going to get something out of it. I mean, it was interesting. The fact is that she would just accept it. The fact is, like, you would think, Rowena tends to be a little greedy, for her to be like, oh, I have a grandson. I'll take this as a price for helping you with this whole situation. So that was kind of interesting, because she's the one that she helped them track down Gavin in the first place. But it seems like this was all, like, it was about doing the right thing for her grandson because she cared about him, because he was such a good person. But more so than that, it was also about screwing over Crowley, because Crowley killed her favorite son, Oscar, all for the sake of, connected to the whole removing the mark of Cain from Dean's arm. Once again, I was about to say another season 9 thing. That was a season 10 thing. But that's a part of Rowena's reasoning for doing it. It's like, because Crowley was like, yeah, what twisted reason? I don't understand why, but what's their twisted reason for taking my son from me? Like, no, she wasn't trying to take your son away from you. She was just trying to do the right thing. And it's like, oh, she actually did have an ulterior motive. I forget, like, Crowley knows his mom better than anyone else. He knows her so well because he's exactly like her. They're both very conniving people that will do whatever it takes for revenge. So it's like, Rowena's like, this is what you get for killing my Oscar. You kind of tore out my heart by taking away my favorite son. I did the same thing to you. And I'm sure on some level Rowena's also like, yeah, but he's also better off being away from you too. So it's going to be very interesting seeing things go forward with Crowley, because now it's like he's always had a love-hate relationship with Dean and Sam, but it's like a situation where it's like, that was his son. His son was perfectly fine here in life, and it's like, more so than anything, it was Gavin's choice. Gavin, like, was already thinking it, and he agreed with their choice of, like, sending him back in time to die. But Crowley, probably looks at it as like, no, it's their fault this all happened, because they had to be the goody-goody two-shoes. And it's like they had to, because I already got brought up last episode that Lucifer was like, yeah, they're not your best friends. They're going to screw you over. It's just a matter of time, just because that's the kind of relationship you have. And it's like, now Crowley's going to be super pissed at him. I was like, you took my son away from me. And now he's going to be also pissed with Rowena. And I'm just curious to see what he will do. I mean, this kind of screws over Sam and Dean, because they definitely can't be asking him for help going forward in the future, because they screwed over Crowley hard, with this episode. So, and also, like, and since I brought up Lucifer, we ended up finding out the reason why. I was like, oh man, what did he do? It's like, what was the whole trick behind it? It's like, he messed with the spell before Rowena did anything, and basically Sam and Dean think that Lucifer was put in an egg, much like all of us thought. And I was like, well, the egg thing or capsule, whatever it is that he was put in. And I was like, apparently he was, summoned back into hell, in particular back in his original body, which apparently, like, I guess the way Crowley's like, oh yeah, we found it a couple years ago, and they've been holding on to it. Because the last time we saw that body was, the physical body itself, like, anytime it came down to, like, he always took that form when he was talking to Sam, because that was the last body he was in before he was in Sam and before he got locked back up in the cage. but the physical body was somewhere on Earth, I assume, just because like that's the body he was in before he went to talk to Sam because it was decomposing. I'm surprised. It was already decomposing, and maybe being in hell and those chains keeping him bound to it, like maybe that's also something keeping because I remember that being a thing because Sam's the perfect host because that's why he wanted another host. Like this dude's body was meant to be kind of like a temporary thing until he got to Sam's, and it's even then it started breaking down a little bit. But I guess like some of it's been reversed. I don't know. Like I said, maybe there's just different circumstances being in hell. But Crowley is an idiot because it's like even Lucifer's like, you're stupid. You think this whole situation is going to hold. You're going to put me back in a cage, treat me like your dog. It's like, oh, it's fun and games now, but soon enough there's going to be a flip in the situation, which I'm like, dude, there totally isn't going to be one. It's like, how do you not know? Like, Lucifer always gets away. Like, he manages to somehow, especially with, current circumstances. What I love about Lucifer is how much of a smartass he is because he's cracking jokes. He's like, he's actually the one that brought it to Crowley's attention. It's like, oh yeah, the Winchesters, they lied to you about my baby being dead because like, yep, I can feel just a great power from my child. And then even kind of cracking a joke like, oh, you're a dad? It's like, oh man, I need to get some fatherly advice from you. It's like, you being a father and me a father to be or currently a father, but it's like, tell me, when do you let him start dating? And also in this kind of connecting that together is the whole, we got introduced to another prince of hell. I don't know if you'd refer to her as a princess of hell. Cause I thought I heard that like, right, last episode that, oh, it's like, yeah, my sister. I was like, I thought so, but I don't know if she, it's a title. I'm sure they don't really care much about it. I think out of anyone, her name is Dagon. And like, obviously you had Ramiel last episode, and there is another prince, and it's like obviously they've all wanted to be left alone, but Dagon seems to have obviously taken an interest in Kelly, even showing up to save her from angels, which kind of just showing off how badass she is, just like pops them into dust. Kind of a similar circumstance of how Ramiel like died when the spear touched him. So it's like that they kind of also have that power too. Because I was wondering, because I was like, I saw the person with blue eyes. I was like, is that an angel or is that supposed to be Dagon? I was like, it must be an angel because I was like, all the princes have yellow eyes. But, it's like the fact is that she's taken a special interest in, she's basically even trying to sway Kelly's mind. She's like, the fact of the matter is like, oh yeah, you're like, oh, you've heard so much about the devil, Lucifer. It's like, what do you really know? Don't forget, he used to be an archangel. He was like one of God's most trusted angels, So it's like, obviously, she's basically bringing up like good, evil. It's all relative, At the end of the day, it's like things aren't as cut as dry as Kelly might believe. There's some part of Kelly that is okay with that because it's like she knows that she has Lucifer's child in her, but she ran away anyway. That she's not willing to let this baby die. So on some level, she already cares about it, and basically, Dagon is like, you're going to care about it even more when it's born. But also, you at the end when you see Lucifer in the cage, kind of smiling, in hell, smiling and being like, Dagon. It's like, I am very curious why she's the most loyal. Because, like, as Ramiel brought up last episode, he did not care. None of them did. But it's like, but he was like, yeah, Dagon's taking an interest. And it's like, why? Because it seems like Lucifer never gave a damn about any of them at the very least. Because anytime he's been on Earth, whether it's been in, back in season 5 when he originally came to Earth, when he got released at the end of season 4 / in season 5 being on Earth, or when he was in Cassio's body back in season 11, it's like at no point did he ever reach out to them. And it's like, obviously, the context of the story of being like, well, we're only just introducing the princes now. But still, even then, it's like, that could have easily been something, like, it just seems like he doesn't seem like he gives really care about them at all. It seemed like even Dagon, maybe he only cares about her because of her, like, she's close to Kelly and his baby. But I'm wondering, like, why is she so loyal? Like, she's willing to help out Lucifer's baby because I'm thinking she's keeping in contact with him. Maybe this entire time she's always kept in contact because it seems like she's kind of a devout follower, even though all of them were supposed to be like, yeah, we kind of doing our own thing. So it does seem like she's very loyal to Lucifer. So that was just kind of interesting to me. That was just something I couldn't help but notice. I'm very curious as to why. I guess she believes in the whole message, like, just like, oh, Lucifer just kind of wanted doing his own thing. Granted, like, I mean, that's what I don't get, because like Lucifer doesn't care about demons. He actually hates them all. He's disgusted by them. So if he wanted to, he'd wipe them all out. I mean, granted, we don't even know 100% of how he felt about, the princess. We don't even know how he really felt about Lilith, because Lilith was his first. But like when it comes to other demons, he looks down upon them. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's like you hate demons even though you created. I mean, you gave birth to the first generations of them, sure, but it's like, I don't know. It's so weird. I guess it's just kind of interesting because he has a similar perspective to his aunt. Because his aunt, the whole premise of season 11 was her trying to destroy everything her brother created. So I guess it's a similar sense of like, I don't know. It seems like more so than anything, he just wants to wipe everything out. And it's like, how can you serve someone that wants that? Not less, maybe it's a situation where Dagon is in love with him. It's like maybe she's always been in love with Lucifer, and maybe that's why she follows him so eagerly. I don't know. We'll just have to see what that means going forward. Because another side of this episode is about Mary's little secret about working with the British man of letters, and she's talking with Mr. Catch, who is like, the fact is you should put some distance between you and your sons. And she's like, wait, what are you talking about? It's like, she's like, you put on this motherly persona when it comes to talking to your children when you're around them. It's like, that's a version of you. It's weak. He's like, it's not, me trying to push you down or anything like that. It's just me making an observation. He's like, but you have a blade in your hand. There's a monster in front of you that basically that's when you're your realest self. And he's like, that scares you on some level, doesn't it? Because Mary always went through so much effort to kind of keep her family away from it. But the moment she started hunting again, and now like you see it, just the thrill of it, that maybe on some level it is there that she always, maybe she's afraid that once she's, there might not be any stopping, that eventually she'll get consumed by it. And even then, like her family won't be enough to kind of satisfy her, that she only lives for the fight, which she doesn't want that. She wants to have her family. She's even saying that family comes first, which for Catchell, he's like, the fact is, Mr. Catch is like, did I just call him Mr. Catchell? Mr. Catch is just basically like, hey, the man of letters is my family and everything. It's like you kind of have to make sacrifices in this great war. Like, oh, we're doing good work. And it's like, you say that, but I don't know. Like, obviously you got your own ulterior motives. I mean, she ends up, I'm surprised that it happened so soon, but she does go, okay, and I'm going to tell you the truth. I've been working with the man of letters and the British man of letters. And they're like, wait, what? It's like, you do remember the fact is that they tortured Sam, right? And it's like, oh yeah, even Mr. Catch being like, oh, that was one of our rogue agents. It's like, it still doesn't change the fact is that they're not 100% trusted. Because what Mary doesn't know about them is like, in Mr. Catch's case, obviously he kills people who, are a potential threat. There was that girl that Sam met who was also like him, who had telekinetic powers. Basically, her entire family was dead, with the exception of her mom, who was like, it's like, oh, you have the devil in you. And Sam and them went through the trouble of saving her, trying to get her a new life. And Mr. Catch eventually caught up with her and killed her in the bathroom, which sucked. I hated that so much. But then there's also like the people that were connected to that black site that Sam and Dean were in. Like everyone that knew Sam and Dean's names, all of them were killed just to cover up their tracks. And it's like, so they're not good people. At least with hunters, yeah, things aren't 100% always accurate. Like, because it's going back to the fact this Mary is like, oh, this will save the most lives. This will make it so that people don't, no one has to lose their lives caught up in this whole battle with the supernatural. It also means that her children won't have to be caught up in that battle, won't have to live the rest of their lives fighting that battle, can, live a normal life. It's kind of, the goal, I'm sure. But it's like, and that's kind of the whole thing. But like, even with hunters being the way they are, they might not be the most elegant and have the access to the most tools and everything. But the fact is, they don't go around killing witnesses. Side note, something I was thinking about earlier, because it's something that has not come up, and it's always been floating in the back of my mind, about the whole Amy's son. There's that monster, I forgot what she was exactly, but there was a girl, Amy. She killed her own mom to protect Sam, but she never actually fed on people. Dean killed her anyway, and her son popped up, and Dean's like, oh, come after me whenever you want to. I'm very curious to see if that kind of pops up as a recurring storyline or not. I mean, I've always been waiting for that to kind of pop up, but it's yet to pop up. So I'm curious, will that be something coming this season or not? Because I feel like that's a storyline, once again, Supernatural just bringing up storylines that could just pop up. I don't actually remember what season that's from. Was that from I think that might have been 8 or 9 that that popped up. I don't remember. It definitely was a while back. It's not like one of the more recent seasons. So it had to be like maybe 8 or 9 that came up. Maybe even sooner. Maybe even 7. I don't remember. But nevertheless, that just kind of has been popping up in my mind a little recently. And I felt like just kind of adding that in there. But more often than not, they don't kill witnesses. Like people who know about the supernatural world, they're like, yeah, now you know how to kind of, like, I mean, because it's like you take, I forgot her name. Is it Jodie, played by the lovely Kim Rhodes? Like the fact is, if the British men of letters found out about like some random cop knowing about the supernatural world, would they kill her, for example? Her and Claire. Right, and then she also has her, and Jodie also has her adopted daughter, Alex, isn't that her name? Which we haven't seen either one of them so far. Have we seen them at all this season? I don't remember. God, my memory is terrible. I think last season was the last time they popped up. It was because the whole situation about Alex being like, yeah, she kind of wanted to distance herself. That was kind of a whole thing. But nevertheless. But basically we see Mary trying to explain everything, be like, okay, give them a shot situation, because it's like, oh, it's kind of for the greater good. It's like, yes, I'm always putting family first, and I always will be. Like that one, obviously we have a disagreement about this, but kind of hear me out about it, and that's what we see. And now what I found it very interesting, because everyone's kind of all over the place. Obviously you have Dagon and Emily, but also you have Crowley kind of off his game because of all that's happened. He pissed at his mom, probably pissed at the Winchesters, kind of has very few allies in this situation, and now he's got, all this is all happening, and Lucifer's there, and it's just kind of like, I feel like this is the opportune time to kind of strike while everyone's kind of off kilter, and it's like, I'm definitely thinking that Dagon and Kelly are going to play some role in him getting free. Definitely very interested to find out what's going to happen going forward. Because I'm very interested to find out what is going to happen. Because I hope Sam and Dean do find out about the fact is that Mr. Ketch in particular has been going around cleaning up loose ends in their particular cases. So, and also what does that mean for Mary when she'll realize, oh, they're not all that they've been cracked up to be. Because even they have their own secrets. So it's definitely going to be interesting going forward. So I'm very interested to see what happens. And now moving on to this week's episode of Colony, a lot of stuff went down that I'm just going. Obviously, like the biggest thing is the thing. Well, it's not the biggest thing, but it set the precedence for the episode. Like how a lot of events went down. Basically, it's that whole opening about this couple kind of being together, and it seems like he's sick or whatever, and it's like, oh, you got to do something. And the way he was acting nervous, I was like, you're a bomber, aren't you? And it's like, it turns out to be that is the case, but he kind of got cold feet and wanted to back away because he saw that woman for a child and everything. It's like he didn't want to get innocent people involved, but the Red Hats got suspicious of him, stopped him, and the girl that was kind of like his girlfriend blew him up, and it's like, holy crap. She's like, and she was very cold about it too. She's like, yeah, he didn't make it to the target, but still we blew him up. I mean, I don't think it was. At first I was like, is that supposed to be him trying to enter the green zone? But it's like, no, I wasn't really sure where exactly he was heading. They never really bring it up in the episode exactly where it is. But basically this is something where Burke and Will have to work together. That's a big part of this episode too, finding out just how messed up their partnership is, because Will has his own way of doing things just because things have changed with Homeland since these new people have taken over. Like everyone that he's really ever known before is not there, like Jennifer, for example. So it's a situation where it's like, man, you look at Burke, you're like, man, you are an ass. Because the fact is that when it came to tracking down the lady that blew up her boyfriend or so in this episode, what ended up happening was they ended up interviewing her uncle and aunt. And basically they're saying oh, we have no idea where she is. Basically kind of as a backup plan, because Burke was like, yeah, I'm not sure, it's like, oh, we'll try it Will's way. But Will kind of didn't want to dive too deep into the whole situation, because he's like, he knows that they were lying, obviously, but he didn't want to, kind of cause him any trouble. He didn't want to kind of stir up trouble. To me, I looked at it as him trying to, I was like, oh, I thought when Will was looking at him, I thought he was trying to give Burke the look hey, let's back away, but basically they'll get in contact or we can find her that way. That's what I thought, but Will didn't say anything. But it seemed like that would be normally what Will would do. Will's a little more tactful than Burke, because Burke's like, I want results. And basically in this case, he ends up it's like, oh yeah, we've got your grandchildren. It's like, you're kind of almost holding them hostage. It's like, yeah, because he's like, I know you're too soft for this. It's like, just in case, there's a contingency plan. So going back to the fact is, he's an asshole. Then you take this situation where they raided that house trying to track her down, dropping bodies. Obviously, like, you know, it's out of self-defense because they were attacking too. But then he gets to the point where he lines everyone up. He's like, so tell me who runs your cell. Pow! Who runs your cell? Pow! Runs down the list one by one until, like, I think she's the last one. Which Will went back in the house because he was so disgusted by the situation. It's like, because the thing is, Will has never been like that. I think the whole situation, especially when it came to the girl, I think it's because obviously he's a dad and he looks at them, they're young, and he looks at them as like his own children. It's like they're probably closer to his children's age, and especially like Bram, closer to Bram's age. And so seeing them, because they're just kids, especially compared to him, it's like we're dropping kids like it's nothing. It's like, yeah, I get it, they're behind this terrorist act and everything, but they're still kids at the end of the day, and like we're torturing them like this. I mean, because they really did a number on the lady. But there was a dude that Will came across, but Will just kind of let him go just because he was like, I'm not about to send you out there, because if I send you out there, Burke is just going to kill you, because none of them want to talk, especially in her case, because she didn't talk because she didn't know anything, but for Burke, that didn't matter. They just continued torturing her until Will couldn't stand it, so he was trying to help her out and everything, but she like took some cyanide or something and killed herself just because like she didn't want to. I guess it's an easier solution. It's kind of similar to, I think that's another reason too, is because of what went down last episode with BB, like doing that to a kid, and now he's just got that image stuck in his head. Like the fact of the matter is, no matter what the circumstances is, he's still the one that killed BB. Even if BB asked him to do it, like he's still the one that did. So I'm thinking that's another reason, like I said, it coincides with the fact is that they're kids in his eyes. So, because Burke doesn't care, like he's supposed to be good at getting information, but he's sucking at his job. And then, the boss is also complaining about Will not being good at his job of tracking people down. But Will's like, I'm on a short leash. At least he had some leeway when it came to his job originally. Like, he was on top of things in season 1 because he was figuring stuff out left and right because he is good at his job. But it's hard working with someone like Bert. And basically, the boss is like, basically, you both got one more try before I just fire both of you and take your jobs and then basically find some other department for you to be in. So it's just kind of sad that I just halfway, like, I don't think things are going to end well for Burke. Maybe they will. Maybe it's a situation where it's like, oh, we'll look back in his past and find out, oh, he wasn't actually a bad guy. But until that moment, seeing him, all we know about him is what we've seen so far. He, once again, I'll reiterate it for a third time, he's an ass. It's just like, I mean, even his boss has got to admit that's not the most practical way to get any information. It's like you literally killed all other people that could be interrogated. You literally left yourself with one person in the first place. So really, this whole situation, it's Bert's fault. Because for one, also, it's not like she was going to talk anyway. Because basically, she wasn't anyone high up in the chain anyway. She was basically just a recruiter. She talks about the fact that like her job is basically to recruit people, boys who are basically lost. Like she's kind of supposed to be kind of almost like a siren to bring someone who's lost their way and kind of be there for him. Hence her whole boyfriend situation, which I talk about the fact that it set the precedence for the episode. It's because that's what girl Maya was for Bram. And I was like, they're having sex. And then she's like, I need you to steal Snyder's red car. I'm like, oh, dude, she's using you super hard. Granted, that situation didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to. What I was so certain, I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to set Bram up to be the bomb. And it's like, but no, like, I mean, it turns out she actually sets herself up to be the bomb. I was wondering because when I saw like them helping out Bram and everything, and just telling him it's like, yo, get back before anyone notices. I was like, oh, so because I was wondering about that, but it turns out it was Maya who was going to be the bomber. But it was still true, but it just hit Bram because he didn't really think about that, like. He doesn't know about this group that he's in ties with. Because what also like set that in my mind is the fact is it's like, oh, we have this little thing. They basically toast before every mission. It's what the dude and the girl did at the beginning of the episode, and then Bram and Maya did it. So I was like, that's why I was so certain. I was like hoping something would come up that Bram would see through it and be like, no, I'm not going to be a part of this. Or that basically he had secretly been being a triple agent, basically like, oh, he's pretending to spy on them for Snyder while pretending to be spying on Snyder for them, when in actuality he really was kind of a triple agent. I know, really, it doesn't make much sense for me referring to him like that, but that's what I was thinking. Like he was still playing both sides to a certain degree. But I mean, he did lie to Snyder. Basically, like, oh, they're trying to get out the main gate, which there are a few people because obviously they believe in their mission so much that they're willing to sacrifice each other. So. It's kind of another thing. Like I think I brought it up earlier, since I'm thinking about the whole subject of sacrificing themselves. Like it kind of like the whole Burke situation. I was going to bring it up earlier, but I kind of forgot about it. Like another reason why I was thinking about the whole situation with Will is because even when you look at the Resistance in season 1, the only person he just killed outright in cold blood was Quell, but that was for his own reasons of trying to protect his wife. But like even when it came to situations of dealing with the Resistance, he didn't go out of his way to kill anyone. Like for Rachel example, that was LaGarza who did that. He's the one that put bullets in Rachel when, Will would have been like, no, let's take her in and stuff like that. But, with Will, kind of seeing this side of things, like he already knew like, oh, there was kind of a side to the whole torture situation. But now I think this is actually his first time seeing it firsthand, I think. I don't remember. I don't think he ever saw it in season 1, so I think this time it was different because he actually saw it first, and that's what really set him off. Because Bo was kind of like, "Yeah, you don't want to be down here." So I don't think I can't. I remember there was that case connected to Geronimo in season 1 where it's like those 2 kids, where it's like you find out it's like, yeah, Geronimo's just a bunch of kids. He's just a propaganda symbol. So their whole situation. I don't think Will actually saw their torture. I think it was more so like the aftermath thing, maybe. But definitely this, I don't know. So I'm thinking this might have been his first time, so that's why it hit him even harder. So, but getting back to it, it's like, it's definitely going to be interesting going forward because of that whole plan. Because, also because Jenkins, the kind of douchebag, the main douchebag guard who like to beat the crap out of people, he got his head bashed in. But also because I was like, there's so many things. First, there's the whole pod situation. It's like, what's up with that? Because inside the pod, there was a girl that, but then she started spewing out this liquid and she couldn't breathe and died. It was basically like she was drowning on it. Like, basically being hooked up in the pod's the only thing that kept her alive. Because remember, last episode, Snyder was talking about the fact is that he showed Nolan an empty pod. So it's like, now we see what was in. So it's like, is she a regular human? Were they trying to was she like a created human or something? Were they try, like, it makes you wonder, like, what is their plan for humans? Like, are they trying, like, especially when we learn, well, I'll kind of get to that, soon, I'll kind of mix it in. It's the fact is that with this whole circumstance of like, eventually they're planning on wiping out all of humanity. The LA colony, eventually, I think, they ended up finding out, Resistance ended up finding out from the flash drive at Katy Gate. And mainly that was about finding out about Bram's situation. But now they found out on top of that, it's like basically the message that happened back with the Apollo mission that we saw. Like, I forgot what episode it was, but at the beginning, one of the episodes, that was kind of like, oh, they had gotten a message basically from the occupation ahead of time. And it seems like that message was a countdown of some sort to their arrival, but now there's a new countdown going up, and that's basically the countdown to extinction. Because basically they're sending more and more people to the farms. Basically, they need labor, and eventually going at the rate that they're going, eventually, basically in 2 years' time, a little more than 2 years, basically the LA block will be completely empty. And it's like, what do they have planned afterwards? But nevertheless, going along those same lines, what I was bringing up is, could they be trying to take people, like these people, like they're also getting for labor? Maybe they're eventually going to turn them into a situation where it's like, hey, we're going to inhabit your bodies. We're hollowing out or transforming your bodies so that they could be possible hosts for us in the future. Like I said, we don't know what the hosts really look like underneath, whether that whole suit of armor thing is what they really 100% look like. That's all there is to them. Or is there something underneath and those suits just protect them on Earth's, atmosphere and just its air and everything. So maybe they're trying to prepare Earth for them to like 100% colonize it. That's what this has all been aiming for, so that they could replace humans. And maybe that's what this is all about. I mean, possibility, like, hollowing out humans and making them a body that they can inhabit. Because maybe deep down underneath them, they're actually parasite type of aliens, and they just have to implant themselves into a well-adjusted body that's, going through the right treatments to make it so that life is sustainable for them. Like I said, just a thought. So, especially, with that whole situation. But what I wasn't expecting was the ship blowing up. I thought what was going to happen is I set up the bomb and everything and blow up the shipment there. It's like, no, the reason they needed a pod empty was to put a bomb in there. Well, Maya herself, because someone needed to detonate it. Go up with the ship and the shipments there and explode. And that ship went up hard. Like, she must have set up multiple bombs, or maybe just the explosion was that powerful. Maybe it hit the right spot of the ship. But I wasn't expecting that ship to blow up. I was thinking maybe it'll crash or something, get heavily damaged. But nope, it blew up hard to the point like everyone in the series is like turning, looking up the sky and seeing it light up. And it was like, wow, that was intense. But definitely, like, obviously you have Bram dealing with the fact that Maya is dead now, and it's like who he's gotten mixed up with now. I mean, there's no probably backing down from this because he knows about their plans and everything, and it's not like they can let him go. It's like, no, he's a part of this, whether he wants to be or not. He was probably expecting like doing some damage, sure, but not outright like sacrificing yourself to do something like that, especially since she was the girl that he liked. So, I mean, like I said, I was legitimately thinking she was setting Bram up to be the one to do that, but she made the choice herself. So just kind of shows you where everyone's mindset is at. I mean, she was 100% dedicated to the cause. So, but what would this mean going forward for Bram? Especially, also, there's also going to be ramifications. We saw what happened last season because of finding out about the host being kidnapped, them destroying buildings like that and stuff. It's like, we also heard, I forgot what it was. I think I brought it up earlier in the season too. There was that whole situation. There was a city where one of their hosts died, and basically that city got reduced to rubble or something like that. I think someone brought it up last season. So it's like, now that one of their ships got destroyed, they lost a lot of shipment and stuff like that. It's like, what does that mean? There will, because I saw a little glimpse of it. You have Schneider being like, yeah, there will be ramifications for what went down. I'm very interested to find out what those ramifications are. Another side of the story is it's kind of an interesting thing where we have Nolan telling Maddie, is like, yeah, I got got a call. Basically, some people, they basically found out about a file being downloaded off the computer, because basically the occupation keeps an eye on stuff like that. It's like, yeah, some files were downloaded. It's like, oh, who could it be? Maddie, at first I was like, she's surprised, but Maddie didn't say anything about Katie, because she knew exactly, obviously she later on figured, I mean, she sat there and she was like, oh, I have no idea. There was like tons of people out there. Like, why would I know anything about it? It's like, you figured it out pretty immediately, because I mean, especially when he brings up the list. Obviously the list is only one of a few things that was kind of downloaded on that flash drive, because Katie was like, yeah, just tell me about Bram's situation. Everything else on that flash drive, you can kind of do whatever you want to it. But Maddie figured it out immediately. Interesting though is that she didn't tell Nolan, because even though he's like, oh, put our family first, it's like, our family kind of comes first. It's like, don't be concerned about someone else's family. It's like, she is concerned about her family, because that's still her sister. And I also think on some level she's okay with it. I mean, obviously she has a problem with it, but I'm like, I think on some level I was thinking like maybe she'd be okay with it because she knows that she's worried about Bram. She's like, oh, you could have asked me about the whole Bram situation, which is like, would she have really gotten a straight answer out of you? Because it's like, you and Nolan have been very coy about this whole situation, because it's like, obviously you're not doing everything you possibly could do, because once again it's like, oh, why put yourself out there for someone else's family? Put your own family first, and that whole business. But Maddie confronted Katie, and Katie's like, what? No, there's like tons of people there. Why would I wouldn't do that to you? It's like, Katie's really good at lying. Sadly, Maddie just doesn't realize just how good at Katie's gotten at lying, because she had to sharpen up them lying skills last season. So it seems like they're still intact and everything. And it's like, holy crap. And she's like, yeah, man, I don't know, Maddie. Like, I'm sorry that happened, but it's like, obviously I had nothing to do with it. You kind of like, but like Maddie totally believes her. I mean, maybe not. It's very interesting because it's like, obviously Katie's playing it up even more, because it's like, oh, obviously I'm not going to admit it, because it's like, it's going to draw a lot of attention, because it's like, because even in this situation, Katie's like, yeah, she used her sister, yeah, but it was for the sake of her son. But also it's like, she can't really confide in Maddie for multiple reasons. One, the recordings, but them being watched and everything, which we know that Jennifer's the only one that really accessed them. But it's like, with Burke so anal about Will, trying to like control every little thing he does, always keep an eye on him. He's probably still watching those tapes too, because he actually was looking at them, when Jennifer was still there. But nevertheless, there's that. But also because it's like, I think Katie's not really 100% sure she could trust Maddie with telling her that, because, Maddie is more in her eyes, it's probably like Maddie's more dedicated to her and Nolan, as well as her new position, and she would probably take Nolan and their side rather than taking Katie's side. So that's another reason. Also, I'm surprised that hasn't turned into something too, because it's like they're having that conversation in front of the camera, but then again, Katie's like denying it. But still, like, I'm surprised Maddie, I wonder will Maddie catch any flack for that because it's like because Maddie doesn't know they're being recorded because I mean that's the whole point. But it's like what is could that recording get back to Nolan and he'd be like, oh, so you knew exactly who to go to first? Why didn't you tell me you had suspicions about your sister? And she's like, oh, my sister said she didn't. And I was like, oh, now I got to step in to you really didn't do a thorough enough job. Now I'm gonna have to talk to your sister type of thing. So, maybe it turns out to be nothing, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where that goes. And also, there's a whole situation of like, oh yeah, we have to bring Lindsay back on. You have to make sure things are right. And she's like, right. The whole being watched and everything. She's like, you're 100% right. Goes to visit Lindsay, and it's just like, look, Lindsay, I wanted to apologize. She's like, yeah, I kind of knew you were coming. It's like, yeah, I know you're having a hard time transitioning into, coming to terms with your new reality. And then she's like, you should know, Mrs. Bowman, I'm here not just for the kids. I'm also here for you too. And you just see the look on Katie's face, and Katie's like, thank you so much. She's just like, you can see her dying a little on the inside, having to fake it so hard. So Lindsay is back in the house, which Charlie's still causing problems. And there's that whole conversation between him and Will. Like, Will's teaching him. It's like, oh, here's this. Basically, it's a wood with a bag of rice. It's like, oh, here's a punch. And he's trying to teach him how to punch and everything, which I guess how I'm interpreting that is like Charlie's pissed at him because it's like, you don't try and be a dad for me trying to teach me something. It's like, you weren't there for me. He still holds a grudge to the fact that you didn't come for me immediately. It's like, on some level, blames his dad because it's like, you didn't get to me soon enough. It's because of you that I spent all this time away from our family. So kind of screw your dad. I mean, it seems like he's kind of, the only person he's kind of decently close with is so far Grace. I mean, we don't know how he will be around Bram, but definitely like, he's a little cold towards Will. It's hard to say how he is necessarily towards Katie. As I brought up before, they are heading towards the route of Extinction, which Katie brings this up to Will and is like, yo, we need to do something, like, which now is kind of like, okay, like, because she wants to help the resistance because it's like, helping them is a lot better than not helping, but it's like, also Will's got to be careful too because it's like, under these circumstances, it's like, things are not looking good. I mean, for him, he's like, his main goal is like, hey, we need to get our family out of this block, because they only have 2 years and some change and still got some time, but who's to say they won't just expedite their whole situation and kind of make it so they're taking a lot more people a lot faster. And I'm chalking this up. It's like, oh, does this mean Will has come over and it's like, okay, him and Katie are definitely going to be working with the resistance, because Broussard is like, he needs Katie on his side because he can't handle this on his own. Because like, remember, he wasn't the one that originally ran the cell. He's more of a soldier. He's kind of a foot soldier. He's not much of a leader. Obviously, he can give out orders and everything, but prior to that, Quell was the one that gave him the orders and everything. Which I don't even think Broussard doesn't even know about, like, Will being the one that killed Quell, does he? The only person that knows about that, I mean, now is Katie, but also Jennifer. But it was also Bo was the only other person that knew about that situation. So overall, a very good episode, and I'm very interested to see, especially where we're going down next episode, all the stuff that went down this episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.